Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. Of course, here we are in the energy capital of the United States and quickly becoming the energy capital of the world. It's extraordinary to see what's happened, and thanks to fracking and some other cool things in the technology front to really push energy independence. We are there if we choose to be, if we just embrace it. Even a mediocre liberal Republican, standardly speaking, would have already fully have gotten us energy independence, like a John McCain over the last several years. But even with Obama's best efforts, we are getting there quickly because energy does make America great. And that's what we're going to talk about this segment. And I get excited about this. Just past week, Venezuela, major shakeup happening and protests and potential disruptions. And if you notice, your prices went up only slightly, whereas a couple of years ago, you would have seen some serious volatility. But that's because we're just a lot more independent than we were a couple of years ago. Marita Noon, what do you do there for Energy Makes America Great?
Kevin, it's great to be with you again, and I certainly appreciate your introductory comments there about how America's energy abundance has helped to really stabilize the price of gasoline despite turmoil across the world. And, interestingly also, when you look at the Ukraine and the turmoil there, a lot of that is energy-based as well.
Yep, it sure is. By the way, you are the executive director of, I think it's the ResponsibleEnergy.org, right?
Yes, well, we have two organizations. One is a 501c3 educational arm, and that is the Citizens Alliance for Responsible Energy. And then we have a 501c4, which by the IRS definition can do more advocacy work, and that is Energy Makes America Great, Inc., and the website is energymakesamericagreat.org.
Yeah, where are you located, by the way?
Based in Albuquerque, New Mexico, but we deal with energy issues statewide, region-wide, and nationwide.
Very good. So what's your message for us today?
Well, there's a lot of interesting things going on, and because we started with kind of Venezuela, and then I brought in the Ukraine, since we're starting with an international bent, let me point out what Mexico is doing. And I wrote a column recently addressing that, and it's called What Mexico's President Knows That Obama Doesn't. And the key factor there is that Mexico's new president, Peña Nieto, has changed. He's been able to get the votes to literally change the Mexican Constitution to bring back into Mexico foreign energy investment technology and know-how, because he understands that low-cost energy is the key economic driver. And that's a big lesson that Obama needs to learn, because his policies are continually trying to raise the cost of energy in the United States.
Yeah, no question about it. That they are trying to conserve energy through higher prices. As essentially what they're trying to do. When we really don't need to do that, and in fact, what we need to do is we're looking more and more at more ways of innovation.
Yes, and with that innovation that you mentioned comes the potential for liquefied natural gas exports, which would be a wonderful boost to the U.S. trade deficit, and it would help countries like the Ukraine. Europe right now is really wanting some new LNG sources because Russia, as we're seeing in the Ukraine, they're forcing their way on the Ukraine because the Ukraine needs the natural gas, and when you can only get it from one place, they can control you.
Yeah, very interesting, very interesting. And I tell you, that people don't realize it, but we are the world's leader when it comes to natural gas.
Yes, we are. We're
the Saudi Arabia. We're the Saudi Arabia of natural gas.
That we are, and we have so much more we could be accessing that we're not accessing for two reasons. One of them is that the federal government has put them off limits. In New Mexico, where I live, we have one of the world's largest known reserves of natural gas that 7 years ago, back when everyone was in a panic over climate change, the federal government, Congress, put the Via Vidal off limits through the Via Vidal Federal Protection Act. And we've got this president, President Obama, is wanting to make more national monuments and other kind of land designations like that, wilderness areas, inventory groveless areas, and all of these things put that natural resource that we have off limits. And so that's one of the reasons why a lot of our natural gas in this country isn't being tapped. Another reason is that the reality is the low-hanging fruit is gone, and what we're extracting these days is more expensive to extract. And with natural gas, because of the way it's shipped, which we can discuss if you want, but we can't ship it overseas at the moment. We don't have liquefied natural gas terminals, so the market for natural gas in the United States is very limited. Our supplies get maxed out, which has kept the price very low, but it's also kept a lot of the resource in the ground because using the technologies of horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracturing to get at that resource is expensive.
Yeah. No question about it. There's no question about it, even though it's a great innovation and it's growing rapidly and it's expanding. But we need to figure out ways to fully exploit that natural gas. Kind of give us an overview of exactly the reforms that they've done in Mexico and what the impact has been.
Well, the new president, he campaigned on this idea that they needed to reform their energy policy. 1/3 of Mexico's federal budget comes from oil and gas. However, in the last decade, their oil and gas reserve, their extraction, their production has dropped by 25%. Now, Mexico's not a rich country, as we all know, though it is rich in natural resources, and they can't afford a 25% drop in production. But that's what they're dealing with. So he understood that we have got to do something, and we have got to exploit these resources that they have. But back in 1938, when they nationalized their energy resources, kicked out companies like Royal Dutch Shell, companies like British Petroleum, companies like Chevron or Exxon, they kicked them out. They expropriated their resources, and then they just used this resource really as the cash cow to fund the government without putting anything back into research and development, which the American companies have done, which is why the American companies have the technology for horizontal drilling and fracking. And in Mexico, they have an abundance of shale oil and gas resources, and they have ultra-deep water resources like U.S. companies have developed in the Gulf, but they don't know how to develop those. So the big changes are to invite these companies back in while maintaining ownership of the Mexican resources.
Kind of leasing it.
Yeah, they're leasing the right to come in and drill, and the way they get paid is not really the way the companies want, but they're working on that now. They've passed the legislation, and at this point they're working on how to make the deal attractive, because you see, in theory, Mexico could nationalize, the oil again and take those companies' assets. So they've got to have a legislative structure that gives these companies certainty, which again is another thing that our economy in the United States, President Obama doesn't understand, that if you want to invite foreign investment into your country, you've got to offer them certainty. And
right.
That's certainly something that is lacking in the U.S. economy
What
right
are you
now.
talking about? He doesn't even offer that to American citizens. What, are you crazy or something?
It's something he could learn from the Mexican president.
I mean, it's just arbitrary. It's become arbitrary. It's incredibly lawless. Our government has become lawless. All right. Thanks so much for being with us. What's the best website? One best website for people to go to get more information.
EnergyMakesAmericaGreat.org.
EnergyMakesAmericaGreat.org. I encourage you to check it out. Thanks so much for being with us.
Katrine, thank you so much.
All right, when we come back, more for you. I do want to remind you, best content is over at USDataReview.com. Make sure you check it out. Like it on Facebook, follow it on Twitter, and stay tuned for more right here on The Price of Business.